And white folks, let me tell you something. You are being hoodwinked, swindled, and bamboozled through things that Eddie Huff was talking about. It's called white guilt. And that's why I ask you the question, what's happened to you? You used to didn't back down. You used to be very bold and forthright. But somehow you have kowtowed. You have become soft to the criticisms of what your ancestors did, and many of them didn't do anything. Right. Didn't do nothing. But here you are standing by letting folks blame you for something that you never had anything to do with.
I'm Rhonda Villamont Smith, and we open all of our meetings with a prayer and pledge. So if you guys would please stand, I'm going to ask Reverend CL Bryant to go ahead and open us in prayer, and then we will follow that with the pledge.
Let us pray. Our Father and our God, oh, how grateful we are for this chance to serve you in this manner. We pray that the words of our mouths and the meditations of our heart will be acceptable in your sight. O God, our strength, our rock, and our redeemer. Teach our hands to fight and our fingers to war against the enemies of this republic that you have given to us. In the mighty name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, CL. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to go over a few things. Vote on the Tulsa public school bond vote. How many people were able to get out and vote for that? All right. We appreciate that, because, you know, we had a number of people that were like, well, I went to vote and my poll wasn't open. Well, it was just Tulsa Public School District. So Union and Sand Springs and Broken Arrow and everybody was not able to vote in it. But I am going to tell you this. You know that we lost that vote. You know that 4%, isn't that about right, George? 4% of the eligible voters? 12.5% of the eligible voters voted. 17,000 people voted out of 138,000 possible voters. We can do better, and we will do better. So we've got to start having a plan. We've got to start working our plan. Our next goal, and I'm going to take off my 9/12 hat and I'm going to put on my chairman hat. Our next goal is we've got school board elections, and the filing is in December. And we will be working those school boards. We are going to focus primarily on Tulsa public schools. However, if there are any openings in any of the other surrounding areas, most of them are held, the ones that are up for re-election this time are held by Republicans. So if they're not going to run for re-election, then we're going to have to find someone to run for the election. However, I want us to take those 2 seats from the school board in Tulsa Public Schools. So, yes, sir?
That'll be District 4 and 7.
Yes.
Will be filing in December and
in February, right. So just like bond proposals fall at odd times, school boards, you file in December, because, you know, who's thinking about filing for office when you've just had Thanksgiving and Christmas is just around the corner. And then, of course, the election usually falls around Valentine's Day, so nothing says I love you to your party chair like having two additional Republicans added to the school board. So do plan on us working very hard to make that happen. Come on in, guys. We got seats. We got some seats up here in the front. It's like church. You got to get here early to sit in the back. Yeah, we've got a couple of seats here. We've got a couple right here. We got a couple over here. I love it. This is a packed house. You guys are great. So the other thing that we have coming up is going to be our, for 9/12, I'll put my 9/12 hat back on. We've on the 25th is our breakfast meeting. We do not have a speaker set as yet, but that's going to be, we meet the fourth Friday of every month at IHOP at 71st and Garnett at 7:30 in the morning. So, roll out of bed and come hang out with some people that are like-minded, and we always have lively conversations, so and it's open to everybody, so feel free to bring friends with you if you want to. Then in August, we don't have anybody, like I said, we don't know who's going to speak this month, but we do know who's going to speak in August, and that's going to be Congressman Hearn. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. I don't know about you guys, but I've been very impressed with our congressman. You know, after Bridenstine, you thought, oh man, it can't get any better than this. And it did. But so we are very blessed with the representation that we have in Washington, D.C. for District 1. On July 4th, the Liberty Center, do you guys know what the Liberty Center is? The Liberty Center was started by Bruce DeLay and a number of different people to, patriot pastors mostly, to have a facility where you could have regular speakers talk about, you're welcome to come on in. We got some seats up front. So to be able to do trainings and educational things, no, right here, babe, you can sit, I mean, you can, just move that stuff off of there. So they're doing a fundraiser, and they're going to do it on the 4th of July. So that's a Sunday afternoon. It starts at 2 o'clock. It's from 2 until 6, so you're not going to miss any fireworks or anything like that. And it's going to be held at the Stokely Event Center. The admission is $5. I think we can all do that. And children under 12 are free, so bring all the grandkids. I've got 21 of them, so I'll be getting my $5 worth. No, they're not all coming. And number 22 is on the way. So who can top me? Who has more grandchildren than I do? Oh, come on, you guys got to get busy. So, yeah, then that's not how it works. Well, I don't know. I heard today, you know, if you knew that your grandchildren were going to be so much fun, you'd have had them before you had your kids, you know. So, I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna let Lori take control. She's going to introduce you to our panelists. We're going to have a panel discussion on critical race theory, whatever other subjects that might happen to come up, and then following that, we're going to have the Reverend CL Bryant speak to us for about 30 minutes. We got seats. So this is Lori Gracie. She is the Vice President of Tulsa 9.12 Project, and she's doing a phenomenal job helping me out while I'm also busy working as the party chair. So please join me in welcoming. Please join me in welcoming Lori Gracie.
Thanks, Rhonda. Thanks. When you work with Rhonda, you wear a lot of hats, and you better have your track shoes on. That's all I'm saying. And don't ask us how fast we drive down that turnpike. Anyway, thanks. How do you like the new facility? Isn't this great? Isn't this nice? We're working out the kinks. You know, it's a little bit new to us and everything, but we're going to get all that worked out. So we'll be here for the indefinite future for our 9/12 meetings. Tell everybody, second Thursday of the month for the evening meetings, and fourth Friday of the month for our breakfast meetings. And the breakfast meetings are still down at the IHOP at 71st and Garnett, 7:30 in the morning. I'm not a morning person, but I managed to get there. So, where do I need to go? Backwards? Okay. I'll get back here. That's one of the things we didn't have at our last location. We didn't have amplification, so this is getting used to it kind of a thing. We are blessed tonight to have with us Reverend CL Bryant as our moderator for our panel, and then to speak with us afterwards today. CL is a native from Louisiana. Any other Louisianans in the house? I know a couple, yeah. We'll be going out for, there you go. We're going out for some crawfish after this. So CL's here with Freedom Works. You probably heard him come last year, and if you were at the Nigel Farage event last month, you heard him on his introductory video inviting us to come this month. And apparently it works, CL. You packed the house, so this is great. We're glad to have everybody here. And then we also have 3 panelists with us this evening. Some you may know well, some maybe not so well. But our first one is Eddie Huff, which if you are a fan of talk radio in Tulsa, I'm sure that you've heard Eddie on the radio over the years, or on his blog spot online, his fresh cup of black coffee. Is that what it is? And your blog is fresh black coffee. That's what it is. So yeah, Eddie's a legend. We love having him here at 912, and we're happy to have him on the panel. We also have with us Leah Hull, who is an educator, also a native of California. She's a California refugee, such as myself. We got out of that state. She's here to share with us, and I got to share with you this quote that Leah had on her bio. This is from Lincoln. She says, "The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next." And so I think we need to keep that in mind when we're choosing whatever the curriculum is in school, whether it's public school, private school, charter school. Think about what children are being taught, because it will set the course for the future. And we also have with us Twan Jones, and Twan is a native Tulsan, a graduate of Booker T. I hear that he plays a mean drum. Is that right, in the drum corps? Anyway, Twan is also the chairman of the Democrat Party for District 1. Is that correct? And he is also a pastor along with CL. So we're glad to have the two of you here as well. You can both pray for us afterwards, I guess, make sure everything goes well. So if you would welcome everybody, let's give them a round of applause. Folks, come on up. And we will have microphones for everybody. So
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Leah, if you'd sit here next to me, and Pastor, if you'd sit there, and Eddie, if you would sit on that side there.
Back of the bus, Eddie.
Back of the bus for you. Back of the bus for you, Eddie. Is that
The
the?
better looking side.
So Eddie, they mistreat you around here, I see. Folks, I'm really glad to be here with you, with Leah and Pastor, and then Eddie. Glad to be here with you. I'm CL Bryant, a senior fellow, Freedom Works, Washington, D.C. In case you're not familiar with Freedom Works, we are the largest, if not one of the largest, grassroots organization in the nation. We boast 6 million activists on the ground throughout the United States, and my job is to travel the country. I crisscross this nation probably once a month, every month, building, educating, and mobilizing the largest grassroots effort in the nation. And we take on topics many times like this so that we can build the bridge to conversation. And I have a feeling that one of the things that is really destroying our nation is that we don't talk to one another anymore. We yell, we scream, and then we tune out each other. But hopefully tonight, this panel, starting right here in Tulsa, in the wake and, of course, in the remembrance of the riots that happened here over 100 years ago. We talk about that. It is important to see these faces in front of you here in Tulsa, to hear various points of views from these faces in front of you. And one of the things I hope that we take away from this is that black people are not just one face. Just like 99.9% of you in this room tonight are not just one face. We all have our various opinions, but there is one thing that is incredibly different about the black community, and Pastor Jones and Leah and Eddie may be able to give us their opinions on this, but there's one thing about the black community that I don't see happen in the white community. You don't vilify each other if you happen to be of Italian ancestry, or you happen to be of Irish ancestry. If you're a Republican, it doesn't matter. If you're an Irish Republican, it doesn't matter. If you're an Italian Republican, it doesn't matter. If you're an Italian Democrat, you don't vilify each other for that. But for some reason here in the black community, in our community,
if in fact we have a differing of opinions, especially when it comes to politics, somehow one or the other of us end up vilified. And that brings an end to conversation. And so what we are here tonight to do is to once again reinvigorate the conversation and, of course, to have you be a part of it. And so let's get started here with the panel. I'll take a seat with my fellow panelists. And, of course, you've all been introduced to Leah Hull on my left and Eddie Huff on my left as well, far left as well. And then Pastor Jones, Twan Jones, is here with us as well. And again, I'm CL Bryant. Follow me on Twitter at RevCL Bryant. The first thing I want to broach here is this question. And I think, Leah, I'm going to open up with you. We'll open the rows on the panel first. You've got all these rows between all these thorns here. Is there, in your estimation, some type of deception that has occurred that has led America and the conversation that's occurring in America to where we are today? Is there something that has been, is there a story that has been told, a narrative that has been created that has brought us to this divide where we are? Speak to it from your point of view. Is it on?
Okay. To frame this conversation, I think what you need to know about me is that the Bible frames everything in which I do. So it is my biblical worldview. It is how I see politics. It is how I've deciphered history and the historical perspectives that we have. I believe the lie that has permeated the United States, and especially our racial divide, is this idea that, number one, that we do not hold to a biblical worldview any longer. Our Bible teaches us that we are one kingdom, one man, okay? And it starts from in Adam. You're either of Adam or you are either of Christ. And so the lie and the deception is that some of us are still operating out of an Adamic worldview, okay, instead of operating out of a Christ worldview. That Adamic worldview continues to posture itself with a lie. We know that the enemy walks around roaring and devouring whom he can, and he's looking to bring to this nation this idea of oppression that starts with the group idea instead of individual responsibility for what has occurred within the United States.
Pastor Jones, when we look at the black church and the hub that it used to be back in the day, and I got one of my homeboys here, Brother James is here from where, yeah, there he is over there, from Shreveport, Louisiana, all the way from Shreveport, Louisiana, graduated the year after I did, same high school. Sure is. I mean, we had a good time. Y'all might have heard us cutting up back there. But he went to a church down the street from mine, Galilee Baptist Church, where I was, and he was at the Methodist church down the street. They were the hubs of the community at that time. Is that still the same? And does sometime the deception that bleeds out into the community these days, not then, but these days, does that come from the church? I mean, what role does the church need to play in correcting the divide in America? Not just the black community, but America. Have pastors like you and I, have we abdicated our responsibility? Talk to us.
First,
You got it. Go ahead and use it.
all right. First, I want to thank 9.12 Project for the invitation to be a part of the panel. I do want to thank God for all the blessings that He has bestowed upon us and across the world. When it comes to the role of the church, I think there is a perception that in the community that the church still has the role that they once had, as far as the influence that it once obtained when in my parents' era. And I would like to say my father is present this afternoon. Dad, won't you raise your hand there? And I'd also like to acknowledge an associate minister at Timothy, Minister Coulter. He's here as well. Won't you raise your hand?
Welcome, welcome.
But in the generation before mine, the church played the role as being the resource center for the community. I think that has faded over the years, and when you enter into most of the churches nowadays, they don't have the resources to address the needs of the community. That needs to be restored and rebuilt in most of the churches today. And so until that, those resources are there for the person down the street to be able to come to the church and know where they can go to be able to pay a bill or get food or whatever resource they need, counseling. If it's not provided at the church, the church should be able to provide that resource to that individual. Until we reestablish that in the churches, I think we're just fooling ourselves when we say that they're doing what they used to do.
Thank you, Pastor. And to Eddie Huff on the end, who is a legend here in media and all of that. Eddie, is there racism coming from the media in America today? The reason I'm asking is I go to my Walmart, I go to my car dealership, I go to my bank, I travel in cars with white folks all the time, but I never experience racism. But I go home and turn on my television or I turn on my radio and there it is. It's nowhere, there's nowhere else that I experience racism except in my own home when I'm watching TV. And so would you please speak to the media's role in this racist rant that's going on?
Wow, this is weird. Every time this thing was on a minute ago. Okay. First, excuse me, I have to take my sponsor, Church's Chicken. You thought I was doing this for free?
Now you have to listen to everything he said. You can't believe a word he said.
I'm just kidding.
It's funny because my wife thinks it's reverse racism because when I get stopped by the police, they always let me go. They always give me, no, seriously, they give me a warning. Sir, is there anything, why you're in such a hurry? I was just trying to get home. Well, slow it down, please. Thank you. And my wife's the type, she wants me to get a ticket, just so she's, I told you. But anyway, so, no, honestly, back in my younger days, I experienced some hassles with the police. But how many of you saw the movie To Serve With Love 2? How many are old enough to remember To Serve With Love? Yeah, with Sidney Poitier. Yeah. Okay, the first one, he was in England, but then they did a sequel on CBS. It was like a made-for-TV movie. And he did a little experiment. He had these kids, and he told this black kid, he whispered in his ear and told him to go talk to this white lady on the street and ask her for something. And the guy goes over, and the lady, she was very nice and patting him. And then he said, thank you. And then he told the white kid to go. And the lady smacked the kid and ran. And the difference was in what they said and how they approached the person. There was on, I don't know if it was one of the cable channels, they did a thing where they switching races. I don't know if anybody saw that. Anyway, and they had these white people made up to look black and the black people made up to look white. And then they sent them out to do different things. And the white couple that looked black, they were always treated really well. They did great. They had no problems. And so the black father, who was a part of this, he didn't buy it. So they said, okay, well, let's just go. You pick a place and we'll go. And they went to this parking lot at this. And this is reality TV. This was for real. And so they went out and they pretended their car was broken down. And then they got these white ladies coming out of a grocery store. Oh, man, my car's broken down. We need you. Oh, sure, let me help you. You know, da-da-da-da. And the black individual, he wouldn't accept it. He got very angry. He just got, in fact, I think they ended the show because he was so mad because it didn't prove the point he wanted to prove. And basically, to answer your question, to make a long story short, that's what the media is doing. That's why they only pick who they want, the stories they want, the situations they want to prove a point that they've already had a conclusion for and that they want to bring forth. So, yes, the media does play a big part.
Let me then ask you this. As all of you know, that the focus now is on the 1619 project, right? The critical race theory project that's going on. Pastor, I'm going to go to you first on this particular question, and then Leah, I'll come to you after. Pastor, why is it that there are certain factions in our nation, seemingly coming from our camp, coming from every direction, that would want to keep us as Americans focused on our past? I have always been of the idea that when someone wants to keep you locked in the past, they don't want you to see where you can go. And because all they want you to think about is where you were. And we know where we were. We were once slaves in this country. There's no question about that. That happened. But when we continue to focus on who we were and what we were, in my estimation, and the opinions may be different, is that handicaps us from going where we are. Pastor, why is it that we are locked in to trying to correct granddaddy's problems? And can we do that? Talk to us. Is it possible to correct granddaddy's problems? I don't know if that's possible, but it may be. Let's talk about it.
It's an interesting thought. I wouldn't say necessarily that we should lock in and lock in on the past, but the past is very important for us to learn from and understand, so that we won't repeat those mistakes that we once made. I think it's very important to dissect those things that happened in the past, the bigotry, the hatred that existed between people, to learn from it and try to find ways to issue in and usher in love and kindness and tolerance with each other. So I think it's necessary that we ensure that we are studying the past and keep it in our conversations, so we can definitely teach the younger generation who have not experienced those type of situations, so that they can learn from it and steer away from it.
Leah?
Well, to understand critical race theory, or to understand what's happening in the United States right now, is that you have to believe that there is a machine, or there is a determination to destroy the American Republic. You have to believe that. It's no longer conspiracy. We're not conspiracy theorists. This is the takedown of the American Republic, okay? And once you understand that is the main and only issue, then you're going to be able to operate and operate within this vacuum of critical race theory. Critical race theory and what they want to do is to destroy the American Republic. They want to destroy our police force. You've seen they want to destroy our idea of the American border, the prison system, and ultimately it is the destruction of the nuclear family. Okay, that is what they want to do. And you have to understand that there is an implicit and covert, and I would say no longer covert, but an overt takedown of our American Republic, okay? And once you understand that, then you'll understand what we're dealing with. I think I answered that question.
Yes, indeed you did. Yes, indeed you did. Eddie Huff, why do we constantly focus on what happened to us? And I want all of you to answer, because the next question that I have hopefully will build a bridge between this and that. But I want to hear from you.
Sure. Yeah, actually, there are two parts to your, and I can't go to the second without the first. First of all, the 1619 Project is a lie. Those were not slaves brought to America. Those were indentured servants. After 6 years, they were set free. And the first case of perpetual lifetime slavery brought in America was by a black slave or black indentured servant who enslaved his own indentured servant for the rest of his life, and that's what changed it. So it was a black man that initiated because slavery was against the law in the Commonwealth of Virginia in 1619. Slavery wasn't official until 1853 in Virginia. And so that's the case that did it. So that's the first part. And then secondly, the whole thing about our past, if reliving and remembering the past would stop prejudice in the future, why do we have people still persecuting the Jews when there are still concentration camps in Germany? You still have concentration camps. We have continual lessons about the Holocaust, about everything. We revisited, every time you turn around, there's something about the Holocaust, right? But yet, Jews are still persecuted. If we're honest, we're persecuting Jews. So to say that bringing up the Tulsa Riot, massacre, whatever you want to call it, to bring up any of this slavery in the past, it's going to heal something. It's not going to heal anything. South Africa, they have that reconciliation board, and they came up and people washing feet and bowing down and doing all kinds of stuff. And South Africa is much, much worse off than it ever was under apartheid. I mean, believe me or not, but it is. That's the truth. The crime's high, disease is high, poverty's high. Everything's much, much worse than it ever was. So to go back to the past, I guess it was Vince Gill had a song, "There Ain't No Future in the Past," and there's no future
country music
in the past. Okay, so.
Eddie,
if you would, brother moderator,
go ahead.
I like to push back on that just a little bit there, because the thing about it is, and that's what gives the critical race theorist their ideology because of statements like that, is saying that the oppressor gets to remain the oppressor, and it gives them that platform, because if we're not if there's a divide, if there's an issue of race, that's their platform, and they can point to it. So if we're saying, we don't even have to look at the past, we don't have to talk about those racist people in the past, well then it gives them that platform to say, see, I told you so. See, I told you so. So I would just caution us to, when we say, well, the past is not important, I think that's a mistake.
Let me ask you this, and then Leah, you can chime in. This is the question I want you to chime in on, Leah, and it deals with what the pastor has just said. This is a question for all of you, and particularly for us, looking at us as Americans who happen to be black in America. I don't use the phrase African America, because Africa is not a country. Africa is a continent. There are many countries in Africa, and so I'm not an African American. There has to be some specific. I have traced my roots back to Nigeria, and so and of course the other part of me is Scots Irish, believe it or not. but just the same, when we look at this question that I'm about to ask you, is there anything, panel, that the color, I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana, and my homeboy back there can attest to this, and I grew up in a time, I'm 65, he's 64. We remember colored and white water fountains. We remember Negro Day at the fair. We remember, and you remember, James, you remember the trolley line that used to run up and down Milam Street on the electric lines. It had to sit up at the balcony in the Strand Theater. We remember real segregation. We remember that. And this is what I want to ask. And we can go, I was born in 56, he was born in 50, I was born in 56, he was born in 57.
So we remember this. This isn't anything somebody told us. This isn't anything we read somewhere, anything we heard. We can tell you what we know. And what I'm telling you from my own experience, the others may have different points of view. I know that America is not 1964. And I got to tell you something. And I want to ask this question to the panel. And Leah, you're gonna lead off on this. Is there anything in this country in 2021 that the color of your skin would stop you from doing if you wanted to do it? Leah Hull.
And I would answer no. Okay, and I'd like to take us back on a small journey of history, beginning in around the 1960s. And again, you have to understand that this is the destruction of the American Republic, and what they're wanting to do is to drive home Marxism and Marxist ideals. So once you understand that, then you understand what we're dealing with. So starting in 1960s, you had the Marxist agenda and communism has tried to infiltrate the United States since around the mid-1800s. I don't have time to go into that history right now, but it's been going on for a while. Beginning in 1960s, you had the Marxist agenda basically take over areas like Soviet Union, Cambodia, Cuba, okay? They decided to turn their sights on the United States, okay? They recognized, though, that they were never going to be able to do the same thing that they did in Europe or in these other places, namely class division or oppress versus the oppressor or proletariat versus bourgeoisie. They recognized that they were never going to be able to do that. What they did recognize that they could do was that they could harp on the American wound, and the American wound is racial divide, okay? So again, the Marxist agenda, they believe that everything is always geared to political and cultural revolution, and that we have to do things to gear us toward that political and cultural revolution. If I can take you back to the 1960s and into the 1950s, there was lots of legislation. We had the the 14th and 15th Amendment, and we also had the Civil Rights Acts of 1965. These things gave black people the ability to use policy and legislation to be free, okay? And we utilize that, and the United States operated under that, okay? This idea that you are oppressed and that black men and black families are oppressed, these things began because there were philanthropic organizations that walked into black communities and walked into black churches. I would namely say Margaret Sanger. Okay, because if anyone knows the history of Planned Parenthood, it was Margaret Sanger's idea of eugenics and genocide that stepped into black communities and told them, hey, it would probably be better if maybe you aborted your children, and then utilize resources within those communities to make that a way of life for black communities. So again, this idea of our government oppressing us, I would say it's not so much government oppressing us, rather than ideology that is oppressing the United States. And people are within the United States are operating and deciding to live underneath that agenda or that narration, and that is but it's ideological.
Eddie, I'll come to you last on this. Pastor, is this a situation that we need to pay attention to as far as the advances that we have made? Is this 1964? Are we still trying to relive the past? Talk to us about it.
Well, I don't think a person's skin color will stop them individually from reaching their goals, but I do think that prejudice in the heart of people will see skin color and make it difficult for someone other than that skin tone to advance in the circle that they may have influence over. So I think skin color still does matter, whether we're right, wrong, and different. I think it still does matter, but it doesn't stop anyone from reaching their goal. The prejudice in the hearts of people stops us from trying to achieve our goals.
Eddie Huff.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say to y'all, my dad was from Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, right across from you guys. And he used to finally speak of the crow's nest, which is the balcony where all the black people watch the movies, the crow's nest. So let that sink in. But anyway, but he spoke fondly. I mean, he would just be, remembering the times on Saturday mornings watching White Cowboys. In the series, which is all they had at that time. But anyway,
I still watch White Cowboys.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, please, not the Dallas ones. That's just not the Dallas ones. Okay, now anyway, first of all, Twan, which one of us up here is oppressed?
I didn't say that. I'm saying that the critical race theorists.
When we talk about forgetting the past, that's what they love to jump on that, the oppressor and the oppressed.
Okay, I thought you were saying that it's important for the oppressed to still look at the oppressor.
Well,
I thought that's what
critical race theorists will jump on that when we start talking about forgetting the past.
But you don't believe that?
No.
Oh, okay, all right, good. Oh, okay, then I can wipe all that off. Okay, and when Leah was talking about the whole thing of communism and socialism coming, I was asked the question, what happened to the communists after the Berlin Wall fell down? Were they raptured? Yeah, right. I mean, you would think so. They disappeared, right? All of a sudden, 1989, I actually lived there. I even have pieces of the Berlin Wall in my house. But what happened to all the communists? Did they just disappear? No, they didn't disappear. Exactly. Yeah. They came here. Education, the government, they've infiltrated us. And maybe one of the worst things is because we no longer had a clear and present danger. We didn't have a clear enemy. And so they were easily able to infiltrate. Also, the whole thing about them affecting labor unions and so forth. There was a black sociologist named Harold Cruz. He never had a college degree or anything, but he was one of the brilliant minds, and he was a professor at the University of Michigan, and he believed in pluralism. And pluralism is like what Booker T. Washington felt, that we have to, black people, Hispanics, Asians, whatever, Jews, you build within your community, you make it strong and rise up, and then once you're at a stature and have that foundation set, then you will automatically compete with your fellow citizens. And Booker T. Washington called it the American crucible. He said that no race that has ever accomplished anything in this nation has ever done so without going through the American crucible. And he said it's tough, it's a fight, it's hard, but you can't escape it. And if you don't go through it, you won't achieve what you want to. And I believe that what happened started with Lyndon Johnson and beyond with the Great Society and everything, when, as he was saying, they started wanting to give us stuff. They wanted to have social workers come in and give us stuff instead of making us earn it. I think that was the most dangerous thing. And then the communists have now come, and it's not a black thing anymore, people. And I think most of us here understand that. It's no longer a black thing, white thing. It's an American thing or not an American thing. And if you want to be like Venezuela, if you want to be like Cuba, and nobody's ever succeeded by bringing the rich people down to our level. It's only by bringing yourself up to the level of those above you and striving and not ever stopping and teaching that to your kids. So, I'm sorry.
Frederick Douglass, very good. Very good. Frederick Douglass, Leah, once said that if the black man stands, let him stand. But if he falls, let him fall. He'll get up again. And like you were saying, Eddie, what has happened whenever it seemed as though black folks were going to fail, there was always somebody to come along and prop us up. And they felt that it seems as though there was a feeling of obligation from bleeding heart white liberals to do that. But in many times, what they did was make us mascots and make us their pets. And the progressive liberals are still doing that in so many cases. I'm going to talk a little bit about this in just a minute. But this is my question. If Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and you name them, are right, Leah, was the civil rights movement a failure? Was Dr. King, Rosa Parks, Medgar Evers, were they wrong? Because both of them can't be right. Either the civil rights movement has brought us, Pastor, has brought us, Eddie, Leah, to this table in a room full of people who, if you listen to the news media, we should be right now facing a lynch mob. If what they believe about, what they want America to believe about you in this room, if that is true, then we should be facing a lynch mob. But that is not the truth. And that certainly is as far from the truth that I can possibly imagine it to be in this country at this point in time. So, if Antifa, Black Lives Matter, BLM, is right, and Black Lives Matter is right, then did the civil rights movement fail? And is there a stolen valor that's going on, Leah, in this country from those who actually paid the price for us to sit on this panel in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2021? Talk to us.
So to be honest, yes, I do think that there's stolen valor. Not to bring it back to my family, but my great uncle is A.P. Turod, and he worked very closely with Thurgood Marshall to desegregate Louisiana, and then also to form legislation that would for the Civil Rights Act of 1965. So those men and women work tirelessly for the rights of all people. Okay, not just their own race. Not just their own race. It was for the rights of all American people, and it was also to uphold the values and principles of the American Republic. Okay, it was stated in the Declaration of Independence, and it was codified with law with the 14th and 15th Amendment, and then again with the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So yes, I believe it is stolen valor for those people. And again, and I would take it back to, once you understand that this is for the destruction of the American Republic and to move Marxism and socialist and communist ideals into the thread and root and foundation of what America is, then you will understand what is going on. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and Thurgood Marshall and A.P. Turod, they only lose now if we allow this lie to take root. Okay, they only lose if we allow that lie to take root. If we stand up and if we allow people of color as ourselves, whether regardless of the shade of which we come, because like he was saying, we are vast and different and very diverse. But if you allow us to speak to the reality of what is going on, and less the liberal agenda where it's almost like they feel bad for us, we don't need that. Okay, we need the truth to be spoken, and the truth is not one of us is oppressed. Okay, my life started in 1987, and I can guarantee you, I am of American Indian descent. I am of black, and then also of European. And not once have I felt oppressed in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Okay.
Eddie, go ahead and deal with that. Deal with the idea of whether or not there is some type of stolen valor, and then Pastor, I'll come back to you.
Sure. First of all, Twan, I apologize. I misunderstood you there. Didn't I? Okay. Yes, definitely. We've heard it throughout the years. Everybody here has heard of the term race pimps. Booker T. Washington called him a certain kind of physician that doesn't want the patient to get well, because if the patient gets well, they lose their job, right? They lose their income. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. So a lot of people put on this cloak of oppression, and they use it to go around getting people to feel sorry for themselves, for them, and to give them things. And there are people in this town. If you go back, I'm going to go quickly to the race riot, okay? The thing that's never mentioned, or rarely mentioned, is the fact that North Tulsa became more prosperous after the riot than it was prior to the riot. And those that are honest, it's integration that destroyed it. I had a good friend, he just passed away a couple of years ago. His family owned the drugstore in North Tulsa. As soon as integration hit, white people's medicine was better than the medicine they had at that store, right? The old saying used to be, ice was colder, the water was sweeter, you know, all that kind of stuff. I used to be a farmer's insurance agent, and there was one black farmer's agent in town. He would tell me he has fraternity brothers that they'll give him the car insurance and so, but when it comes to life insurance, investment, et cetera, they will go all the way to South Tulsa to find a white agent who takes the same exams, works for the same company, offers nothing more than he would, but for some reason the white insurance agent's stuff was better. So it's one of those things that there's too much blame shifting. And stolen valor, yes, that a great example is those that were with Dr. Martin Luther King when he was assassinated. People putting his blood on themselves just to be able to say. And
Jesse Jackson.
Yeah, some of these people have risen to a great stature just simply because they're able to say, I'm going to have to say John Lewis too after him. Anyway, but these people rose to great stature just simply because they were around Martin Luther King. And that, to me, is the ultimate stolen valor right there. They never paid the price that he paid. He paid the ultimate price. They never paid that.
I like to say it this way. I think we should be careful not to shoot the messenger to distract us from the message, especially when it comes to Black Lives Matter. Black lives do matter, and it should matter to us as blacks. You know, oftentimes I think we shoot the messenger because we're talking about the police brutality, but Black lives should matter in our own community when we see the black on black crime. So Black lives do matter, and we as a community within ourselves should realize the crime that's going on with it that we're doing to ourselves and take a stand against that as well. But that's the message to me, is that the lives do matter, and we need to ensure that we have the safety within our community to protect the families that are within it. But I think we get distracted sometimes with the people that are at the forefront that we see. We can easily attack them, and when we can attack them, people can jump on that bandwagon, oh yeah, that's a bad person, so let's forget what they actually said. But lives do matter, regardless of what kind of label you put it on there. At the end of the day, all of our lives matter, whether it's black, white, or indifferent. Just because we say black lives, it's still a life that we're talking about, and it should matter.
Absolutely. Now let's deal with percentages. Absolutely, Pastor. Let's deal with percentages. Many of you may or may not know that black people only represent 12.8% of the population, right? With black women being the majority of that number of 12%. Let's say that there's 7%. Let's say that black women are 7% of the overall population of black people. Every man, woman, boy, and girl in America represents 12%, 12.8%. Let's say that black women represent 7% of that 12%, right? Okay, so what do we have left? 5% of the population that is black male, right? So 5% of that population being black male, every black man, every black boy, it represents 5% of the population, right? So every grown back black man in this country would probably cut that figure in half, down to 2.5% of the entire population in this country is grown black men, like the pastor, myself, and Eddie.
That's all we represent in this country is 2.5% of the entire population. My point is this. If there is a design to eliminate us, that's not a hard thing to do. So the numbers themselves actually give way to the fallacy that's being exercised on this nation, and we buy into it because somehow the media inflates the presence of people who look like me and who look like the pastor and who look like Eddie and then Leah in this country, which makes it appear as though there's a tragedy that is occurring when most of us never experience that. Most of us never experience a bad run-in with the cop. Eddie, I have my friend Sean Hannity, I'm on his show often, and Hannity calls me Leadfoot Bryant because I go wherever I'm going fast, and the cops stop me all the time. But guess what, Eddie? They always let me go. Not because they know who I am, but because I give them the respect, and I comply. Mr. Bryant, slow down. Be on your way. That has always been my experience. They don't know who I am. Sometimes when I'm with my son likes to dress hip-hop, I dress hip-hop. And we're pulled over. But still, I give them, and I'm on my way. My question is this. Pastor, I'm going to you first on this one. We know that, there are people, like you said, who are respecters of color. There's no question about it. We all are. I think God is. God made so many different colors that he must like colors. But he's not a respecter of people, of persons. That's what Scripture tells us. God is no respecter of persons. I think this book of Romans, around the 11th chapter, it tells us that. He's no respecter of persons. But he does love color. Because the colors, if you don't have cataracts, the colors that are in this world is absolutely brilliant. And even looking at this panel here, looking at you, God loves different colors. He made them. And so, my question is this, Pastor. Going along with the question that I asked about, is there anything in this country that if you were black or whatever color you are, that you want to do, would the color of your skin stop you from doing? Is America, as the founding, or the first paragraph of the Constitution says, is America then becoming a more perfect union? Or is this union somehow down racial lines being divided, blown up, and destroyed? What is meant by creating a more perfect union? Talk to us.
Well, I think America still has a long way to go because we're still struggling with being inclusive. We still have hatred and bigotry that's present in our nation. When you look across now, if you just look at the voting rights, who should vote in suppression of voting? I mean, I won't say that's racial, but there's definitely a divide in our nation about who should go to the poll and vote. So we still have some learning to do on being inclusive and being appreciative of everyone's individual rights.
Absolutely. Leah, would you talk to him?
So, give me a little bit of back.
Go ahead.
I need. So the question really is there still a problem within the United States? And are we, can we still make our way toward a more perfect union? And I believe we can. I believe that we can. I believe that it's going to take people on both sides of the aisle coming together and talking. But more importantly, and I know I'm kind of belaboring this, but it really is getting back to American ideals and principles and values. We have allowed ideologies to just run rampant within our institutions, within our cultural institutions, and within our societal institutions. And until we honestly grab them and really just re-identify and re-look at them and see where we want to go as the United States, then we're not going to get to a more perfect union. But I think a lot of it comes down to, and I'm kind of belaboring it, but when you look back at what happened in 1776, one way that my dad always described it was that it was providential. The hand of God stepped in with those men to create this nation. And I know, we have and it's not listed within our biblical stories, but what happened within the United States, that's of biblical proportion, okay? It is of biblical proportion that the hand of God would literally step in to our politics and into the beginning of a nation and establish its foundations. So it is incredibly important for us when we're at this precipice right now, is that we have to decide, does this union want the freedom and the liberty that God has designed for us? Or are we looking towards something else? Do we want that? And if we do, we need to be very concerned about how that world is going to look like for our posterity, because it is not going to be the United States that we are used to.
Pastor, rebuttal.
Well, my question would be, what is America's values? Because I think you could get some very, very different answers about what our values are. So to be able to get to that more perfect union, I think we're going to get stuck talking about what is Americans' values, because I think that's.
So I think our values would start at being but starting from a biblical worldview, and we have to get back to that. We have to get back to where because that is going to direct every decision, every policy, every piece of legislation. And I think, honestly, Dr. Paula Price, she said it perfectly, but we need to be a people that allows Jesus in the ballot box. We need to be a people that allows Jesus on the Senate floor. We need to be a Jesus that allows people in the Oval Office. And what we've done is we've disallowed from not even being a vessel ourselves, we've disallowed him the opportunity to work in and through us. And so, and I know that is like, some people, they look at me and they're like, well, our nation is not going to be all Christian, or we're not going to all do that. I understand that, but the people that, but some of you God has spoken into your lives that you are supposed to be leaders. Some of our children are being raised up to be leaders. Some of you guys are in the pulpit. Some of you guys are in the 7 mountains of influence, and you have the ability to speak, and you have the ability to change the direction of this nation. But I believe it's going to start with a biblical worldview of things, and it's going and really a stepping back, looking at our political climate and recognizing that really where we're going, those things are all cut from the same cloth. And I'm going to say it, but Black Lives Matters, Antifa, liberation movements are all cut from the same cloth. And those cloths are of a Marxist background.
Absolutely. You can believe this or not, and Pastor or Eddie, you may disagree with me. But when you look at Al Sharpton and you look at the Klan, they're the same people. They're financed by the same people, and their idea is to divide. That's what it is. Before we go any further, Pastor, just give me this one chance, and I'll let you in. Right. I want to recognize my friend Rhonda Smith, who put this on. Rhonda, give her a hand back there. She's standing in the back. And a young man who I spent a lot of time on the road with, our office is in D.C., but he's from Texas. I live in Florida. Victor Nevis from Freedom Works. Give him a hand if you would. Eddie, I want to hear from you, Pastor Holt. Eddie, I want to hear from you on this very topic of perfect union, a more perfect union. Talk to us about that. Are we headed toward that? Is it anything that is bygone?
What's happening?
Yeah, that's a tough one because to me, the real answer is as the church goes, so goes the nation. As the church goes, so goes the world. I think Leah hit on it, that we've got to return to God. It's all about God. And I'm disheartened. Pastors that I think are really sound, have great teaching, they're incredible theologians and teachers, but when it comes to this thing of race, they're wimps. I mean, it's the only way to say it. And I think one of the greatest problems facing us today is white guilt. And you have these pastors that are just riddled with white guilt. And I would say, put your pants on, man. Gird those loins and stand up. Tell these people no. It's crazy. I use the church I go to, for example. It's got a huge black presence. It's got black worship ministers, black people on stage, speaking, preaching, doing all kinds of stuff. Yet, for some reason, they still are talking this social justice stuff and like all of the racial equality and I'm the guy, I like to write letters. I've written letters to all these big time pastors. When I see them, I watch them on TV and stuff, and they start going into this social justice stuff. I just have to let them have it. I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. But I honestly believe that it's the church. Years ago, God brought me to 2 Chronicles 20, where Jehoshaphat had basically united. I don't want to go through the whole biblical history thing, but anyway, there was a northern king and a southern king. The northern guy was bad. The southern one was good, but he got affiliated with the other guy. And so Jehoshaphat got affiliated with this guy and had to run for his life. He almost got killed because they got wiped out by the enemy. And so they went back home, and they had 3 armies facing them, from Edom, Moab, and Ammon. And they were coming against them. And what did Solomon do? He called the nation together to repent, and they stood before the Lord, and he confessed. And he says, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are upon you. I mean, they were at that point, and we're almost there. And we have three things coming against us. One is Islam. The second is communism, or secular humanism, which is embodied in communism, secular humanism. And the third one is New Age syncretism. You got this whole New Age, these people, all roads lead to the same place, spirited, the people, I'm spiritual but not religious. You've heard that. So those are the 3 things that are facing America today. And if you can keep your eye on those 3, and here's the deal. Those 3 armies are united to the destruction of this nation. If they were to succeed, they would turn on each other like rabid dogs. They would pick each other off in a heartbeat. And so those 3 are only united for one reason. That's why you see the secular humanists and the communists and socialists all supporting Islam. You wonder, why are they not coming down on Islam? It's because the enemy of my friend is my friend. It's one of those deals, okay? So anyway, Pastor, so getting back to your thing, is the American dream still a reality? Are we still able to? Yes, but man, it's going to take some true faith, some true need time, and speaking out. We've got to preach not just religious sermons. We've got to speak the truth to people, okay? And it's got to be the truth of God, that all things must submit to the God of this universe.
Amen, amen. Pastor, I want to deal now with social justice, and this is the last topic on the panel that we'll have tonight, social justice, reparations. Has anyone in here ever been a slave? Okay. You may be a slave to your job or your wife or whatever, I don't know. But has anybody in here ever owned a slave? Pastor Leah and Eddie, of course, there is going to be on the American table for us to deal with and analyze here in the future, in the very near future, is this question of social justice, the social of reparations. I'll let you know right now that I don't understand how me, never having been a slave, I am the great-grandson of slaves, can expect payment from you, who has never owned a slave. I don't see how I, who have never been a slave, can accept payment from you, who has never owned a slave. And then the question is, what can of worms, what Pandora's box does that open up? Because everybody has been somebody's, without saying the word Negro, at one time or another in this country. And when we talk about the 1619 Project, I want you to keep in mind, Eddie alluded to it, I want you to keep in mind that America was not a nation in 1619. America wasn't even a country in 1619. So the very premise of that project falls on its face simply by chronology. America became a country in 1776. And 86 years after that, slaves were free. I think it's because of the document that founded this nation, that we were driven there and we started on our journey toward a more perfect union, which we're still trying to achieve right now, a more perfect union. Because the founders knew that it wasn't a perfect union when they founded it. No idea is perfect when you find it. That's all America was. America was an idea that we're still working on. But this is my question to the panel. Pastor, I'm going to start with you. Is there then a justification in 2021 America to repay you and me, Leah and Eddie, money that, in my opinion, of course, your opinion be whatever it is. This is and I hope you understand and I hope you can appreciate how we black people on this panel tonight have presented ourselves to you and these topics in a calm, generous, educated way. This is who we are. The people you see on TV don't represent black America. This represents black America. Pastors, please.
If I would go back to another question, then I'll jump on that one. It's my opinion that when we say America gets back to its Christian values, I would question that, because when has America ever demonstrated Christian values? It's a hear what I say but don't watch what I do type of mentality. You might say it, but it's not practice. So I'd question when has America actually demonstrated Christian values? I know we say we do, but to me, I haven't seen it. Now, when you go back to social justice, I'll say this about reparations and all that. Here's my attitude on that particular thing. If someone was to break in my house today, and they stole some stuff out of my house. And I called the police, say, hey, man, and filled out that police report. They stole my TV, they stole my this, they stole my that, and the other. 10 years down the road, the cops still hadn't found them. So what, do I give up? I shouldn't expect to get my property back. I shouldn't want that person who broke in my house and stole my stuff be brought to justice. Forget about insurance and all that. What about the justice of the person that violated my privacy? Some of the people that have done things to the people, our ancestors in the past, still to this day have not been identified, and many of them have never been brought to justice. It's been ignored. So what? Just because they haven't been brought, do we just forget about it now? So hey, look, when they haven't come to justice, why are you guys talking about it? People need to be brought to justice for the horrific crimes that they have done. So what do? Teach people, you do it now, and if we sweep it under the rug and not talk about it 10 years, 20 years from now, then let those people get away. Let them move on with their lives. They shouldn't be brought to justice because we want to talk about money. Those people still need to be brought to justice and pay for the crimes that they have committed to our ancestors.
To your point, I do agree with your point. Sure, criminals should be brought to justice, but that's why I opened with asking the question, have any of you ever owned a slave? Have any of us ever been a slave? So who answers for my grandfather? Because I'm sure that your grandfather is dead like mine. Okay? Talk to it, Leah. Talk to it.
Okay. Or Eddie, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, okay, take Barack Obama. He's half African, half white. So his father's people sold us, his mother's people bought us. Does he get reparations? I mean, who does he? He needs to pay twice. Okay? He needs to pay twice. So that's just one of the problems. And as he said, no, I mean, honestly, there's nobody's alive that can pay you back. Nobody's alive. So you're going to punish somebody's children for the sins of their father. And Twan, I'm going to end with this, because one of the things that is holding captive Black America, okay, is unforgiveness. Matthew 7 says, if you do not forgive, neither will your Father in heaven forgive you. Until Black America is ready to forgive and give that up, we will always be in bondage. We will be in bondage to bitterness. We will be in bondage to, and it will never, ever be quenched. It cannot be quenched.
So if I break into your house tonight and steal your stuff, you'll just forgive me and don't even worry about it. It is the same. Crime is crime. We're saying just let people do what they want to do regardless, and we just forgive them.
No, all right, let me ask you.
People are going in this, they're committing crimes and atrocities against others, and we're just looking the other way.
Are your children supposed to pay my children 20 years from now?
I want to talk about people being brought to
that's
justice.
the same thing. Well, you're asking the children, great grandchildren
people being brought to
slave
justice
owners
is not the same thing.
to pay you, the children of
and being
slaves.
brought to justice is not the same thing.
We have a question from the audience.
It happened.
And what do we say?
What I'm saying is, let's look at the race riot. Yeah. 100 years, have I mentioned anybody color? I said if somebody broke in your house, we took it to race. See how easy we go to race? I never did mention race. I asked Eddie if I broke in his house. We both Black. How is that a racial thing? See how easy we go to race? What I'm saying is, if we look at the race riot, and a lot of people that live here right now in Tulsa are just learning about it. It was swept under the rug. A lot of those people weren't brought to justice because we didn't even talk about it. So when they were alive, how come we weren't talking about bringing them to justice? Now, I'm here now, but I'm talking about when it was happening then. How come they weren't brought to justice then? Some of the crimes that are going on now within our federal government, why aren't they brought to justice right now?
I go along with that. Leah, please speak.
Well, and I would. There's never going to be a correct answer to reparations. For me, I always ask the questions: what do we tell the families, the children of families of interracial families? Does their dad hate them? Does their mom hate them? Is that child going to expect reparations from their father's side of the family or from the mother? I mean, this stuff can get so deep-seated that we won't ever be able to find our way out of this, okay? And I would also want to say is that the wound of racial divide is so hard in America that even in panels like this, you see us take different positions. Me personally, I don't believe reparations should be paid out because it will be too difficult, and it opens up a Pandora's box that we will never be able to close. But I don't know the answer for justice, okay? I don't know the answer for America for justice. I do know that we serve a God that, and I do agree that a lot of, I believe, the ideology holding the black family down, or the black man or woman, is this ideology that they deserve to receive something. And while there has been a history that would say, yes, you deserve something, I don't think that we are allowed to stand in that and say, and with our hand out, because what it has done, it has created generations of people that, like you said, they're not looking for excellence. They're just looking for the next little platform to move here. They're not looking for excellence. They're not looking to go up. They're just looking to get to the next little point here and the next little spot here. And what you've seen is generations and generations of poverty, of a black-white divide, of a gap that continues to grow. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that it starts with, and I'm going to say it again, it starts with a biblical worldview. It starts with having leaders in those positions that are making God-centered decisions. When you're not making God-centered decisions, I'm going to operate out of my bias. I'm going to operate out of my prejudice, my prejudgment of a situation. I'm going to operate out of my own trauma even. Okay? And so when I'm utilizing those three, in a sense, those are an unholy alliance. Okay? And so we have to operate, again, God regenerates us, he restores us, and then he pushes us back out into this world and he says, go, send me. Okay? And so we need to be a people that is ready to put down our own agendas, our own ideologies, our own traumas, and operate underneath a foundation in which the Lord can operate in you. And I know, and again, that is going to take a lot, because that starts with that starts at auditing ourselves. Okay? That starts with auditing your family. Okay? That starts with auditing your own decisions. Okay? And so when we can get to that point when we're doing those things, I do believe that it's going to lead us to a more perfect union, and I do believe that it's going to lead us to greater things in this nation. But we have a long way, but I don't believe it's going to start with repayment.
We're going to go to closing remarks, 2 minutes for each panelist now, and I'm going to start with Pastor at this point in time. I thank Pastor Jones. I want to thank Leah Hull, Eddie Huff. I've heard so much about you in these last 24, 48 hours from everybody from Chicago to here, man. I've heard all about you, and so glad to make your acquaintance. You are truly legendary, believe it or not. And I want to thank all of you for coming out here tonight and being a part of this conversation. I hope we can have many more of them. Go to freedomworks.org, and become a part of one of the largest movements to build, educate, and mobilize a grassroots movement in this country that is geared toward lower taxes, more freedom for you, and less government involved in our lives. And so, Pastor, with all of that, I thank you again for being here with us. Man, I can't tell you what a joy it has been to talk to you and to meet you, and I'm sure that we'll be friends for the rest of our lives. But in closing remarks, 2 minutes, everybody. Pastor, whatever's on your heart.
And Rhonda, forgive me because I didn't answer your question directly. Reparations, I stray away from that subject because I think it's a distraction. That's too difficult of a question to answer because of the complications that are involved with it.
I want to say something, if you don't mind. I can't tell you how much I appreciate Twan coming in here and knowing that I want these conversations to continue, just as we had spoken earlier. That's the only way we're going to be able to work beyond this. And so I just want to say very much that, and I knew that when I asked Twan to come, that, you know, he's got a completely different worldview than we do, or not maybe worldview, but he has a different view than we do, but we're never going to learn if we only listen to people that agree with us. And so I want to say thank you, Twan, for coming out. It means a lot to me. So thank you, and we will continue this.
Pastor, before Pastor continues, please take to heart what Rhonda has said. You must begin the conversation not with people who think like you do. You need to talk to folks who think differently than you do, and then ask each other questions. That's how the conversation happens.
And I would use as my closing remarks that I think the common ground from what I've heard from the panelists and what I've heard the greatest response to is that we have a love for God, Amen. Our Father in heaven.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
So if that's the one thing I take away is our love for God. The caution I will suggest to all of us is that even Scripture teaches us that there will come false prophets and there will be people that tell us things to tickle our ears. So we must connect and have our own relationship with God and know what His spirit, His true spirit of love is. Otherwise, we will have people that come and say scriptures and quote us scriptures and lead us astray and find ourselves still hating and having the bigotry in our heart that we still find present in our community today.
Thank you so much, Pastor. Eddie Huff, and then Leah, will end with you.
Okay. Thank you, Leah. By the way, Twan we're actually more like brothers. We used to work together, but 15 years ago, 16 years ago, we worked together, and he's always been a special brother. So any conflict you see, it's just me. He replaced Pat Campbell. But anyway, no, seriously, thank you first of all, Reverend Bryant, Rhonda, everybody, and thank you all for coming. Again, I think the whole thing, it depends on the church. In the true church, it's not necessarily just because you have a reverend. I'm a minister. I went to seminary. I got my license. I can marry, bury, and baptize. But I purposely never took on the name Reverend because I didn't want it to mess with my head. So I just never wanted to do that. And so just because you have a Reverend by your name or a doctor, Joe Biden, no. If you just because you have a title doesn't really mean that you know anything. But honestly, it really comes down to, my father, God bless my dad, greatest man I'll ever know, as I'm sure everybody's father is. And he just taught me from early on that you can only defeat yourself. And he, when I was little, if I got in trouble, he was always there to bail me out. And I was a bad boy. I mean, I was arrested. I did, all kinds of stuff. I mean, one of these days, maybe my testimony. But seriously, but he always, I still remember when I was a little boy, he would sit there with me doing homework, and he would ask me the answer, and I'd give him an answer. And he said, "No, that's not right. Are you sure about that?" And I'd say, No. And he says, "Well, why did you let me talk you out of it?" He even if I was right, he would challenge me. He said, "Don't ever let anyone, a teacher, anyone, if you know you're right, know you're right. Know everything you know so well that you know you're right, and no one can take that from you." And I'll never forget that. And so I think I've lived in projects in Philadelphia. I was in gangs. I was, I've lived. I've suffered true prejudice. Okay, white kids I sat in school with. I went to Catholic school, and so I'd sit next to these little Polish and Irish kids in Philadelphia, and if we tried to go in their neighborhood, they throw rocks at us, cuss at us and throw rocks. And then Monday again, it was like the Roadrunner and the Sheepdog or something. You know, all of a sudden in school, we're sitting next to each other, but we don't go in each other's neighborhoods. It's just how it was. But always, I went through my radical period, but man, when the Lord saved me, he told me I had to let it go. He said, you're not going to survive. If you hold on this, you will not survive. He said, I'll show you 3 things. He said, if you forgive, I'll show you, first of all, you need to get over yourself. Not everybody that is mean to you is thinking about you. They've got wives, kids, jobs, all these things that they've got to deal with, and you just picked them on a bad day. You know, you met them on a bad day. Secondly, there are those people who do have issues, and I will use you to change their minds. And that third person, they may never change, but I will condemn them in their sin, but I will give you tenfold the love in place of that rejection. And I remember saying, wow, that's an offer I can't refuse. And I know that from that moment on, because I was walking around as a new Christian just waiting for some white person to make me mad. No, I'm telling you the truth. I was just waiting. I knew it was going to happen, and it would have happened. So God basically convinced me I had to let it go. And until the black community lets it go, until they let it go, there will not be that forgiveness. There will not be that liberty, that freedom. And until the white church forgives themselves, you're adding to them remaining in that. And if I may, I've got a book coming out soon. I've been working on it. It's called Y'all Have Sinned. Y'all have sinned. And yeah, y'all. And all y'all. No, but, and if you talk to Rhonda or whoever you may know, get my info and I'll give you the info and I'll let you know where the book is. But it deals with almost everything we talked about here tonight. But everybody, y'all have sinned. Y'all need to get it together. No, but thank you again. Thank you so much. God bless everybody. And
Leah Hull, bring us on.
Okay, I'm just going to end it like this. So when I was growing up, I've already told you I have descent, Black, American Indian, and also European. And I remember always going and asking my dad, because we moved from California to what I consider just no culture Broken Arrow back in like 1991, 1992. And I was a fish out of water. I'd been living in Pasadena, Altadena area of California. Everywhere around me, there was diversity, okay? And I remember, I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and I just remember almost every single day going home and asking my dad, but Dad, what am I? And he would say, you're American. And I would say, Dad, but what am I? And he would say, you're a child of God. I'd come back again, Dad, but they say that I'm this. And I'd say, Dad, what am I? He would say, tell them, you are American. And I mean, this went on for years. And you know, my dad would say stuff like, well, you know, if you both bleed, you're going to bleed red. You know, little things that as a child, it's kind of almost tongue in cheek. You think you're like, this is not going to save me when they're coming after me when I tell them I'm American, because they're telling me I'm clearly not. So someone please help me. But I say all that to say that what my dad did was that he was also a history teacher, but what he did was he always promoted American ideals. Okay, American values, okay? And he was honest about the injustice that had happened in America. So, for example, my dad was part of the kids in Glendale, California that were bussed in, okay? My mom has always been able to passe blanc, if you guys are aware of that term. My mom has always been able, as myself, to pass for white, okay? And these are terms that some people are aware of and some people don't. It has made my life, quote unquote, a little bit easier. I can tell you that, okay? When people look at me, I'm very ambiguous in my skin tone or in my what I can be. Sometimes people think I'm Mexican and it works out in my favor. Sometimes people think I'm black and it does not. Sometimes it does. Sometimes being American Indian works out in my favor. Sometimes being of Scottish Irish descent works out in your favor, okay? So, but I say all those things to tell you that my dad always made sure to tell us that we were Americans. Okay, we were Americans first. Okay, we were Americans and we were Christians first, and that framed who we were. My last point that I want to say is that instead of always looking back on diversity, let's be a people that promote excellence. Okay, let's be a people that promote excellence within our churches, within our families, within our communities, and within ourselves. You pair excellence with the biblical worldview, and you will be a human being in which the Word and God can operate out with and out of you.
Thank you so much, Leah. Thank you so much, Pastor, and thank you so much, Eddie Huff. Folks, as they rejoin the audience now, I'm going to have a few words with you here, and I want to thank you. I want you to know this, and I want you to take this to heart. When you're looking at your televisions and when you are analyzing what's going on in the news, I want you to remember what I'm about to tell you, because what you saw here tonight is the representation. Here celebrating this Juneteenth celebration that's coming up in America. This is the Black America that you should know. But this is not the one that you're presented. You're presented a Black America that's angry and wanting to burn things down. That's not us. We built this place. Sweat, blood, sweat, and tears. Oh, y'all were directing the building, but we are invested here. To start talking to you tonight, again, I want to thank you so much, Pastor. And I want you to understand this. The pastor has not a different worldview. He has a different approach to an American worldview that we need to talk about. It may seem absolutely different than mine, but I'm going to tell you something. It really is not. We're coming from the same place, but we're approaching it differently. But he put it in a total capsule when he says we're approaching it because we both love Jesus. We both love our faith and our God. Leah, you shared with us your ancestry. You shared with us what's important to all of us as America, because you never hear the word melting pot again, do you? You don't hear that word. It's either white or black, or and somebody's out. But America is a melting pot, and it always has been. I'm from Louisiana originally. I know melting pots. I know Passé Blanc. My father was Passé Blanc. He could easily pass. But this is what we need to talk about. And then through the eyes of having lived a while, Eddie Huff was able to tell us his point of view and his perspective. But here's how I want to close this out tonight. I want you to understand something. That definitions lead us to destinations. And I assume and presume that most of you in this room tonight are God-fearing Christians who understand the principles of Christ and embrace the principles of our Judeo-Christian ethic. And let me ask you this. Have you paid attention to how the definitions are being changed? And how the destination of where we have come from as a nation is being redirected? In the black community, the pastor and I talked about this. The black church used to be the hub, when I was growing up, of the community.
It was the absolute hub of the community. There was a time when homosexuality, black men did not even condone anything like that. That's almost pariah activity in the black community, but even we have embraced certain things that we never did. Well, sure, homosexuals have always been in the church. They've been on the organ, they've been in the choir, they've always been there. There's no question about that. But there wasn't an agenda at that time. Oh, we knew who they were. They were our cousins. They were our relatives. And we didn't hate them. We knew that we used to call them sissies. But that, my friends, was something that we didn't allow ourselves or our children to be defined by. But now the definition of gender has changed on you while you watched it happen. You pay for this in your public schools. How is it possible that you pay for something that has been a pariah to your ancestors throughout the history of this nation? Even when we were slaves, this was still pariah activity. This was not something you did. The definition of marriage has changed. Even though you see men together, but you sure didn't think when I was coming along that two men going to marry each other and that the United States government would condone it. These definitions have changed. And you watched it happen. You have stood by and watched it happen. White folks, I asked you this question earlier today. Rhonda can tell you. What's happened to you? You didn't used to be sheepish like you are. And black folks, we didn't used to be as gullible as we have become. There are folks who look like us, who we have trusted. Over the years, Reverend who wear the title of Reverend, and Eddie, where did Eddie go anyway? Oh, yeah, there he is, okay. You know what, man? Your skin is too light to be sitting there over there. You blended right on into the room. But folks, we have sat by and we have watched this happen. My grandfather was an illiterate man, and so was his father before him. My great-grandfather was actually the first CL. And the reason why he was CL is because they couldn't spell. They were illiterate. So great-granddad started naming all the boys initials. And granddaddy named all his boys. My dad was LC, his brother was JC, and his other brother was WC. That was their names. My dad didn't actually get his name until he went to sign up for World War II. And the induction officer said, well, you can't come in this man's army with just initials for a name. You got to name yourself something. And so my mother was teaching him how to read out of, because my dad didn't read up until the time mom started teaching when he was about 18, 19 years old. But she was teaching him how to read out of a primer called Through the Looking Glass, Alice in Wonderland. And his LC, he realized, was also the first and last letters of the author of that book, Lewis Carroll. And so my father began to call himself Lewis Carroll Bryant. But I come along, my name is Cleon Lewis Bryant. But he instilled in me this idea that we have come a long way here. But I don't want you to forget your humble great-grandfather who couldn't read, and your grandfather who couldn't read, and me, your father, who couldn't read up until your mama taught me how to read. And so he taught me to read everything, and here I stand before you with several degrees. But my point is this. It comes from that illiterate grandfather, and I want to leave you with this. I was very Afrocentric back in the day. I had a huge afro, matter of fact. And before you right now is a two-term president, 35 years ago nearly now, of the NAACP in Garland, Texas. I have seen both sides of this street. And white folks, let me tell you something. You are being hoodwinked, swindled, and bamboozled through things that Eddie Huff was talking about. It's called white guilt. And that's why I ask you the question, what's happened to you? You used to didn't back down. You used to be very bold and forthright. And guess what, Pastor, it actually made us better because we had to be bold and forthright too. It was your strength that brought out the strength in Dr. King because he knew what he was facing as far as your resolve was concerned. I'm not talking about Southerners or white folks in particular. I'm just talking about the structure that he was facing. But somehow you have kowtowed. You have become soft to the criticisms of what your ancestors did, and many of them didn't do anything.
Right.
Didn't do nothing. But here you are standing by letting folks blame you for something that you never had anything to do with. My grandfather. I'm driving down the road to the farm that my great-grandfather and his brothers bought from the former slave owner. The Confederate dollar was worthless. And so my great-grandfather and his brothers decided that they would work to own the land that they once were slaves on. Now, they bought 300 acres of that property. Blood, sweat, and tears. I still own 67 acres of that property to this day. And I told my grandmother on her deathbed that I would never sell. And I have kept that promise. I intend to do that. But I was coming down the road in an old jalopy. Now, it was a 1969 Mustang Fastback, but don't get impressed by that because it was a jalopy. And the 8-track tape deck, some of y'all may remember 8-track tape decks, that I put in it. Well, the sound system actually probably would cost more than the car. But I was coming down the road, afro, windows down, didn't have no air. So it's playing as loud as I could play on my brand new 8-track tape deck. James Brown. Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. Pulled up on the place down there in Grand Cane, Louisiana. You may know what that is, James, down the road there, and right above Mansfield, Louisiana. That's my mother's stomping ground. My grandfather, Charlie Hanson, walked across. My mother's grandparents had names. They didn't have initials. They had names. And my grandfather's name was Charlie. When I pulled up on the place, got out of the car, I could tell that the old man was upset at me for some reason or another, the way he walked deliberately when he was angry and the way he looked at you when he walked towards you. You could tell he was kind of upset. Now, he was an illiterate man who had made his living, made money cutting pulpwood trees. Got to a point where he had 3 pulpwood trucks, and he hired about 30 men in the summertime. And I was one of those, I was actually his slave. He paid them, he didn't pay me nothing. He got a meal and a place to sleep in the summertime. But he walked up to me, and he put his rough-hewn pulpwood cutting finger in my face after hearing the song that I was playing, Say It Loud. I'm black and I'm proud. Granddaddy said this to me. He said, Sonny, that's what he called me. I didn't go through all that I went through.
so that you could be black. I went through all that I went through so you could be free. Free to go places I have never been. Free to do things that I will never do. But Sonny, I want you to know something. I went through he was angry. He was mad because I had boiled down his entire struggle to the color of my skin. And he had to correct that in me. It didn't correct it immediately. But here I am talking about, I'm 65 years old. I'm talking about this 50 years later. I was 16 then. Those words from that illiterate old man to this day has changed the way I view myself as an American. I am an American whose father fought in World War I, who that same grandfather fought in World War I, and his father, the ex-slave, decided that he needed to go and fight in that Spanish-American War so that he could have a stake in this country. So regardless of whatever anybody says, this is my country too. And I will not back down from anyone who wants to take this away from me. Conservatives, my fellow Republicans, but above all, my fellow Christians. We know that they want us to go away. We know that they want us to sit quietly over in the corner. We know that they want us to shut up. Christians, you in particular. But we came to tell them tonight from Tulsa that we will not go away quietly into the night. We will stand and we will fight. Amen. As Americans and as Christians for what our foreparents have paid for. And then finally, and remember, I'm a Baptist preacher. I look at my watch. That don't mean nothing. but anyway, Adam, where are you? Was the call of God to his creation. And he wasn't calling to find out Adam's locale or his proximity. What God realized is that the man that he had created, the creature that he had given instructions to, saying to him, on the day that you do what I have told you and instructed you not to do, that will be the day that you will surely die. Adam, where are you? When God arrived in that garden, or came and manifested his presence there, as he did in the cool of the evening, as scripture talks about his relationship with Adam, he always was able to see the jewel of his creation, mankind. But a day came when God asked the question, what happened to the man that I created? Americans, if our founders were to look back down through the annals of time to what we vote for today, to the way our children act today, to the words and even lyrics of music that we listen to today, if they would look at the church and the state of the church today in this country, they would have to ask the question, America, where are you? We knew that we were not putting together a perfect union when we formed this country. But the reason we formed it is so that there could be a place called America, where people from wherever they came, doesn't matter who your father was, doesn't matter what flag you once waved,
There had to be a place where the Nigerian could come, where the Frenchman could come, where the Englishman could come, where the Irishman could come, and even with the Native American that was here. And if anybody's got a grief, it's them. And be e pluribus unum, from the many, one. Our birthright, if we allow it, Americans, will be stolen from us in this generation if you don't stand up and push back against the very things that will destroy it. There is no way in this world, my friends, that you should stand by and let the things that our ancestors, red, yellow, black, and white, have paid for, be dissolved or destroyed. And so, I want to thank you again for being here with us. I want to leave you finally with this. And Rhonda, I want to thank you again for coming out here today. Republican Party's mascot is the elephant. And I don't know how many of you Republicans, I don't know how many Democrats in here. I happen to lean libertarian, but I vote Republican because in Florida or Texas or DC, where I hang my hats in several different places, you're a pretty lonely person if you're a libertarian. But to my Caucasian friends, the Hamiltons, the Jeffersons, the Washingtons, the fact of the matter is we were founded by those European names. That's a fact. And as Muhammad Ali once said, and I was sharing this with Pastor, we laughed about it. Muhammad Ali is, some of you may be old enough to remember the fight in Zaire against George Foreman. Muhammad gets back on the plane after winning the fight. A reporter comes up to him and asks him, he says, well, now, Muhammad, that you visit the motherland and you've been victorious over George Foreman, what do you think about Africa? Muhammad turned to the reporter and said, I'm sure glad my ancestors were put on that boat. Now, that may seem funny to you. And surely, at the time, I'm sure Muhammad may have actually meant it as a joke. And even though the atrocities of slavery in this country is very real, very bitter, and the memory, the stinging memory of it is not in my mind because I've never been one. But I'm glad that my ancestors were strong enough to survive it. I'm glad that your ancestors were strong enough to survive the great American experience. Because we, my fellow Americans, are the children of not victims. We are the children of survivors and victors in this country. That's who we are. We are victorious through it all, regardless of what has happened in this country. We as Americans have come to a place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where we are having this discussion here as free Americans, each and every one of us. And it has been my custom over the last 12 years that I've been associated with Freedom Works as their senior fellow. I need to ask all of you this one question, and we'll go to the house. Are there any patriots left in America? Is there anybody here who will stand up for God and country, who will stand up for America, stand up for the Republic? Then Americans, stand up, stand up, stand up. God bless you. God bless America.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you, CL. We appreciate you very much. Just a couple of quick things. For Freedom Works, if you'll notice there are a number of placards out here. Can we stand up and hold these so that we can take some pictures and send them back to Freedom Works and say thank you for sending us CL Bryant? If we could stand up, turn around, there you go. There we go, turn around, you gotta face Brian in the back.
Okay, when you be back here?
Where do you want? Oh wait, Victor's gonna tell us where he wants us. And then the second thing I want to let you know about is, in case you missed the donation bucket out on the table, if you would so kindly, okay guys, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. We got to turn around and face the front. So there's a donation bucket on the back. If you're so inclined, please make a donation. We appreciate you guys. We will see you again, same time, same place, next month.